The Titanic sank in the North Atlantic Ocean in April 1912. A while ago, a submersible headed into the sea to find it. Inside the submersible were 5 wealthy tourists. British billionaire businessman and explorer Hamish Harding, Pakistani billionaire Shahzada Dawood and his son, French explorer and diver Paul-Henri Nagelet. There were a total of 5 people, including Stockton Rush, CEO of OceanGate, the OceanGate's submersible tour of the Titanic, which began in 2021. Began several kilometers off the coast of Canada. It was an 8-day course to tour around the Titanic, which is submerged at a depth of about 4,000 meters. June 18, 2023 was the scheduled date for the third heading of the submersible Titan. The Titan, a submersible used for tourism, was designed and manufactured by OceanGate. It was made of titanium, and there were no indoor seats, so passengers could freely sit on the floor. Friday, June 16, the Polar Prince, which was an icebreaker of the Canadian Coast Guard, departed from St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada, to a diving site, and is preparing for a diving tour 2 days later. The Titan was on board, and the vessel arrived at the dive site the next day, Saturday the 17th, at around 9 a.m. on Sunday, June 18. The Titanic was lowered ashore at the site where it sank. Shortly thereafter, she started up and dived, and as scheduled, within a few hours of the dive, she would arrive at the location of the Titanic and start touring. Her first dive process went smoothly without any problems, but after a while, around 11:47 am, suddenly, all communications with the Titan were cut off. However, since OceanGate has experienced similar situations several times in the course of testing, it did not immediately report it to the authorities, considering it a simple error. That's how I wait for a call from the submersible. However, even though it was 6:00 p.m., the scheduled return time of the submersible, the Titan did not show up, and when there was still no response due to communication being blocked, they reported it only then. She was quickly rescued in neighboring countries, including the United States and Canada, but eventually the Titan was destroyed. She was not found for several days, and 4 days later, on June 22, she was found about 500 meters from the bow of the Titanic. When the wreckage of the sub is found, it is assumed that all of her passengers are dead. The Titan had all the oxygen available for a total of 96 hours, and the sound of tapping the hull, which had been captured using sonar. I haven't heard of it anymore, but in fact, the Titan has been raising safety issues by various experts even before it started operating. Accordingly, several hypotheses about submersible accidents have been raised. The first leading hypothesis was an implosion caused by a fault on Titan. Stockton Rush, CEO of OceanGate, the operator of the Titanic, was born into a wealthy family and had a special interest in aviation and underwater exploration since childhood. Later, in 2009, he established OceanGate, an exploration company using manned submersibles, to prepare for the deep-sea tourism business. Since then, Stockton Rush has used 3 models of submersibles it owns to keep them alive until the incident in 2023. The Titanic has succeeded in touring the ship 13 times, but the latest model, the Titan, had several differences from other deep-sea submersibles used in the meantime. 3 different materials were used to build the Titan: titanium, carbon fiber, and it was a special acrylic material called plexiglass, a composite material such as carbon fiber made by mixing 2 different materials together and having different molecular structures. As the diving process was repeated, the seal between the materials could be gradually loosened. Because of this, the Titan's pressure hull can develop microscopic moisture penetration over time, which led to a group of submersible technicians asked to get a safety certification. Rush refused, saying that these excessive safety regulations stifled innovation. A safety certification, and that if you wanted safety, don't get out of bed and do nothing. Also, on Sunday, June 18, when the incident occurred, film director and deep-sea exploration expert James Cameron had already said it was highly likely that the Titanic exploded. At about 375 atmospheres, this was hundreds of times the atmospheric pressure at Earth's surface. Also, on Sunday afternoon, when contact with the Titan was lost, the Navy's acoustic listening equipment had already been heard. It turns out that the sound presumed to be the Titan's explosion was detected. In fact, prior to this incident, Director Cameron and deep-sea exploration experts, like other organizations, it was thought that the Titan would have defects due to the hull using tamso fiber. Stockton Rush expressed continued concern about this, but Rush, in turn, ignored it. In the end, it met a fate similar to the Titanic captain who ignored the warning. If the hypothesis that the hull implodes is correct, the hull of the submersible would have moved inward at about 670 ms. It takes only about 11,000th of a second to be completely destroyed, so it is estimated that the passengers died instantly due to the rapid explosion without knowing why. The second hypothesis is that what could happen in a submersible it's about fire. For example, the Losherik incident, a Russian submarine fire incident that occurred in 2019. Losherik were working underwater at a depth of about 300 meters past 8 p.m. Most of the personnel except for some were asleep, but at this time, a fire broke out in the battery compartment inside the submarine, causing confusion. The fire was extinguished in about 40 minutes, but due to narrow passages and limited oxygen, a fire inside a submarine was more damaging than on land. As a result, 14 sailors died. Even in the case of the Titanic, which went sightseeing on the Titanic if it had been caused by a fire in the internal electrical facility, it would have been worse than in the case of Losherik. There was a high possibility that they were in greater danger, but in fact, the Titan's interior there was 1% operated with a touch screen and one power button, and most of the facilities were made of electric devices with a structure in which the submersible was controlled using a controller similar to the joystick of a game console. Because of this, if a fire breaks out inside, not only will all devices fail, oxygen depletion would have progressed more rapidly due to the narrow interior structure that would fill up with 5 people sitting. Also, even if there was no fire, there was a possibility of power outage or equipment failure. Experts say that communication was immediately cut off shortly after the start of the dive earlier. An unknown power outage occurred on the Titan, which relied on batteries to supply power, and as a result, the temperature decreased, and at the same time it was also determined that the possibility that the oxygen equipment did not operate normally was high. The last hypothesis is that the submersible got caught in the wreckage that was scattered on the site while touring the site after arriving on the Titanic. When the Titanic sank, it sank in 2 parts. Irregular facilities and debris are found at the site where the ship sank. They are scattered all over the place. If you make a mistake, the submersible may get caught in the facility. One unfortunate thing is that at the time, the Titan did not have a submersible that could return to the surface of the water in case of emergency. There were several systems, including roll weights, a hydraulic device for buoyancy, and body-mounted propulsion devices. In addition, there were 7 devices such as a buoyancy device using air and a sandbag that was automatically separated. Furthermore, the 4,000 meters depth where the Titanic is located is in the deep sea where there is no light. It is a difficult environment to recognize the surrounding fragments in advance, and due to the structure of Titan as she had to navigate with only a small monitor and limited vision, she was swept away by strong currents on the ocean floor. The possibility of her being tied up also could not be ignored. In the deep sea at a depth of 4,000 meters, it is difficult to use this alone to rise to the surface. It appears to have been inadequate. The 5 people who left with high expectations to tour the Titanic have not developed to date despite continued searches.